Welcome to Writers Therapy. We aren't therapists, but we're writers and we need therapy. Oh god, I already fucked it up, like... I really thought I remembered what it was.
I mean, let's rip it.
Okay. Sit down, relax, and we take your insurance. I don't know.
And tell us all of your deepest, darkest stories.
We won't hear them because you're listening through your headphones.
And you're our only listener.
We do love you for that.
We
I'm
do.
so amazed. You downloaded us 10 times for our last episode. I got an email about it.
Did you?
I did. Buzzsprout was like, ooh, you got 10 downloads. And I was like, wow. Listeners.
I know.
Really.
Listener.
It's your mom. It's your mom who's our listener.
It's totally my mom. She gave us rave reviews.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's so sweet.
She's so sweet. Yeah, today because I was like, yeah, it's just, nerve-wracking to, do this. It's just a different way to put myself out there. She's like, I've been thinking about that. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. And it's like I get to bring you everywhere in my pocket. Like, oh, that's just the cutest thing I've ever heard.
Your mom's adorable.
Isn't she adorable? I love my mom. She'll be so excited when she hears us. She's like, I got a mention.
Hi, Marty's mom. So we wanted to talk about, we talked off microphone, off air, about discussing Gwen Hayes' Romancing the Beat by Beat.
Mm-hmm. Which is so common to be, acknowledged in romance storytelling that it shocks me when people... writing adjacent
don't know about it.
Know it. Yeah, that's just shocking.
I know. I feel like we use this
this
more
is the
often.
Bible.
Yeah, I was just like, this is the Bible. And then Strunken White's Element of Style popped into my head I'm cheating on it with this book.
Oh no.
Which is probably the most pretentious thing I've said on this podcast. Goodbye.
You know what? I'm really proud of you and your pretension. That was great.
I'm glad you find it charming. I was sitting here
I find you very charming.
Oh, I can't imagine anyone tolerates this.
I have only read Elements of Style one time.
Oh, but you've read it.
I've read it, yes. But it was I had to force myself. I should reread it. It's incredibly useful information.
Yeah, definitely.
But Gwen Hayes, it is a little, but that's just that's just language, right?
Yeah, it's just always grammar.
Absolutely. But Gwen Hayes' Romancing the Beat, man, I'll listen to that once a week. It's so good. It's so.
Oh, you have it on audiobook.
Well, it's available on Hoopla.
Oh,
so
is it?
If you have a library card, yeah.
God, I keep
that's how I
needing
have it.
To set Hoopla up.
Hoopla and Libby are my heartbeat. Man, I am all about, I call it the Bible. I'm talking about my heartbeat.
You're very feeling tonight.
Yeah. You have the pretension, I have the drama. So together,
today, we're a perfect mix.
Yes. Today, we are Death of a Salesman.
Mm.
We are everything.
Am I Death or the Salesman?
The play.
Well, which do I get to be, Death or the Salesman?
No, we're the play together. We are the drama and the pretension.
Okay. Oh, God, I fucked up the title. I thought it was Death and the Salesman, not Death of the Salesman.
You might be right.
No.
I don't think it's so. I think it's Death of. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, my dad does this thing. My dad's such a movie guy. There's this movie called Diner, I want to say it's from Diner.
Okay.
And it's got Kevin Bacon in it, so it's a good but weird movie.
Yeah,
not that that's his brand, but it's early Kevin Bacon.
He is featured in them. Oh yeah, especially the early ones.
So it's I don't want to say it's a good movie. It's been too long, and I don't want to. But anyway, so there's a character, Catherine Heathrow. I don't think she's ever seen, but they talk about her in the movie. And every time they do, they go, she's Death. And then they make a little hand gesture.
That's so
so my dad does that all the time.
Oh, I love that. Andrew and I reference Tom Hanks movie.
Okay.
And it has John Candy, too. Tom Hanks.
Are you Googling it?
I am, yeah. Volunteers from 1985. And Hanks is a white-collar, upper-class like, he has a mid-Atlantic accent, and at the very, like, I think it's the very first scene, but, like, he starts, like, this guy starts yelling at him, and he's like, do you understand what I'm saying? And as, like, Tom Hanks is being pulled away, he's like, just barely. And it is, we reference that all of the time. Like, do you get me? Just barely. Like,
I love that. Because the tone says, not at all.
Not at all. And I'm not trying that hard either. Like, sort of thing. Like,
He's like, I was not really listening.
And I don't care. Like, I take you very not seriously.
Oh,
so.
I love it.
Gwen
Hayes. I have the print copy of her book. When I first read it, I just kept putting Post-it notes over everything that I thought was relevant and so important. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so then I just ended up with, like, every other page is postmarked. Yeah. And my dad picked it up one day and he's like, what did you do to this? Like, you could just read it again.
Well, clearly I'm going to have to. So.
Oh, yeah. I think every time I sit down and I try to outline, I pull up Gwen Hayes's and I'm like, all right, what am I doing? What do I have to do next?
I just don't even outline. I just have the beats in my Scrivener file. And then I just, complete a beat and then move on to the next one. There was on Spa Girls, because I love that podcast, I can't remember the author right now, but she was talking about how she does something similar. And she was like, I just make sure that, like, when I hit those beats, I stomp on them. Oh. And yeah, I know. Isn't that a great phrase? And so, like, I try to keep that in mind with my writing as well. Is like, you don't be vague. You don't have to come right out and say it. Yeah. But, like, let the reader know, like, this is where we're at. Boom. Like, foot on the ground. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I love that. Okay, so we probably should give some premise on what Romancing the Beats is. Yeah. Because, again, not everyone writes romance, and therefore they might not all know.
So, I think this book is just helpful, though. Even if you don't write romance, it can be really helpful in just any kind of relationship. Like, or how to beat it out.
And, like, storytelling in general. Like, there is very much, like, these are the promises being made. Now you must fulfill the promises. And, like, that's the nature of storytelling. Like, that's the nature of, like, satisfying your readers.
Yeah. Set it up, knock it down.
Absolutely. And then build it with some resolution. Whatever that resolution is, right? Mm-hmm. Gwen Hayes is a brilliant human being, and she set this book up so that there's different beats that you can expect from romance in general, right? These beats have always been a part of the genre.
It's kind of like the hero's journey for romance.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point, because there's so many people that want to, like, be like, oh, it's so formulaic. Like, stories are formulaic. Okay.
Yeah.
Romance is just as formulaic as mystery and suspense and crime. Like, a happy ending in romance is expected, just like a criminal being brought to justice is in a crime novel. Like,
yeah, you have to know who the murderer is.
You do, and you have to know who your reader is and what they expect as well. This is an art form, absolutely, but it is something like, this is an art form to be shared, and it's just the nature of it. But yeah, so these are the beats that a romance novel hits, and so she identified them and set them up into 4 phases.
Yeah. And so sorry.
Sorry, I'm doing all the talking, which I promised I would do.
You did earlier.
I did. I'm just fulfilling my promise. Mama Marty is here, apparently. So.
That's fine. I am... Well, so when we think of the story, I think there's different ways to break down I think people a lot of the time think of the 3-act structure. As being kind of the basic, there's the beginning, middle, and end. What do you call it? Is it actually? Yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm like stumbling over myself because I was researching this earlier today. It's really interesting to look at the ways that different cultures have their own version of how to break down different. Yeah. We'll go into it when we talk about we wanted to talk about the third act breakup.
Yes.
Because some people don't think you need the third act breakup.
I don't want to read a book without it.
Yeah. I mean, personally, same. But like there's a genre of a Japanese genre of storytelling that the word means healing, and there is no conflict, and that's kind of the point of the story. But it still hits upon some very subtle emotional beats, and they tend to be very soft and tender emotional beats, you know. So it's interesting, like, because until I like read about this here, I'm just gonna Google it again because I closed the tab because I thought I wasn't gonna need it. It's called a Iyashike. Don't think I pronounced that right.
Well, and I'm not the person to check for you.
Okay. My brother's a weeb, he would know how to say it, but he's not here. But anyway, so the idea is that you have a type of story without conflict. And so, we're just going completely off the rails. Oh my god, I got so lost. I might cut some of this.
Okay. My whole family is here.
Oh, lovely.
So, yes. We left the dog upstairs. I need hugs and kisses. You can't play with that. I love you so much, and I'll see you in a little bit. All right. Listener, mom, that was my family. So.
You know them well, presumably.
Yeah, exactly. So guest appearance from my 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and my 5-year-old, not a 5-year-old.
Just a random one. This one's not yours. Yeah.
We just let this one wander in, and we're like, all right, time for bed, kid.
She shows up sometimes.
She shows up sometimes. Okay, but you were telling me about healing genre.
Yeah, I'll just point out the way that, so some plays, like some storytelling structures, you know, are reliant on the 3-act. Some are reliant on like the whole hero's journey model. So I just wanted to go over the way that Gwen Hayes brings her own structure to romance because out of what she's observed from reading romances. And so hers is kind of a 4-part structure there. So you could think of it as 4 acts. There's the setup, there's the falling in love, there's then retreating from love, and then there's fighting for love. And each, we're not going to get to any of these.
I know, because I've talked too much. Blame me.
We were messaging about this, and we were saying, okay, how many do we think we could cover in an episode? And we're like, maybe just 1 act per episode. Okay, maybe we could do that.
Yeah, maybe we could, but we need apparently an introduction to the book before we even begin. Yeah,
so I guess we're just kind of covering the concept of beat sheets and structures, and that there are different structures out there, and it's really interesting to look and see what else exists and how to, you know, kind of like take what you've learned about the story and your preconceptions of what makes a story and kind of go through each of them and say, is this actually necessary? How permanent, how much of a rule is this, and can it be bent? Well,
because I know in my like education on storytelling, the 3-act was the major thing. I don't remember being taught anything else.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
When I first started writing, I did a lot of sitting down and watching YouTube videos of this woman who just kind of broke down the rising and falling action stuff, you know, the roller coaster that you get shown in high school or middle school. You know, and
yeah, exactly.
Really focusing on this is the only way to write.
I don't remember receiving that message. I just wasn't I wasn't given any other message in general, right?
Oh no, I just took it that way.
Okay. So when you would sit down to write, you would ask yourself, like, where is my rising action? Where's my climax and all that?
No, because I'm not very good at following through with what I've learned. I would just be like, all right, I'm gonna write. And then I would just kind of write whatever. And then I'd be like, when am I gonna like wander this around to the plot? I'm talking about my 7th grade self, please. I've grown since then.
Please leave room for my growth.
Yes, please.
Since I was like 12.
Consider that I've matured. I hope.
So I would draw like the roller coaster, right?
Okay.
And I would try to like, okay, this is what happens here, this is what happens here, this is what happens here, right? That's just not, like, if you're going to try to approach it as, like, outlining at the beginning, it just wasn't enough detail for me there, right? Yeah. And then it just, again, like, I feel like I'm just not an outliner. It's just not something I'm capable of doing. So I would, like, sit there and I'm like, okay, what is the climax? But, like, I couldn't think of it because I need to write half the book before I'm like, okay, this is where we're leading.
Yeah, you're a like discovery writer, I think.
Very much so. Yeah, it just wasn't something that functioned for me. But also it was something that like was expected. But like, I think, you know, you can look at any story, like any romance novel, and you can, okay, this is this is the act 1, this is the act 2, this is act 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can do that because they still function at like within that setup.
Yeah. And like, it's really interesting to have like, you know, read through Gwen Hayes' Romancing the Beat real quick and then, you know, digest it as much as you can and then read a book and see yourself identifying. Okay, this is this beat. This is the next beat. This is we skipped that one.
This is deepening doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are all the moments, and
some of them are really obvious, like the grand gesture beat, right? Like obviously that's the grand gesture. But some of them are less obvious. And so it's really fun to be reading through these books and like identifying like, oh, that was really well done. Like that's how they're setting up, you know, adhesion. I love finding the adhesion moment. I don't know why that one gets me like the most. I love that. So
we're kind of jumping ahead. I always interpret adhesion to be the external plot really pulling them together. This is the first, and like what I do is this is the first moment of the plot coming along, you know, and what I do is I like to take a lot of different types of beat sheets and overlay them on top of each other, which is completely unnecessary and probably not recommended.
I don't know. I mean, if it's your I just want to say function tonight. If it is how you function, if it is how like you feel confident in the story you're laying out, then like do your thing. If it's necessary to you, that's what's important.
I really love trying to micromanage my plot and then not following what I've done. You know, that's just kind of what I do.
That's like my thing. So.
No one else does this.
No one else does
so unique. God.
So we probably should actually say what like phase 1 is, right? And then
Do we want to save that for next episode? Because we've kind of
this is kind of just the introduction conversation.
This is us kind of just talking about beat sheets and the fact that they exist. And you can use them.
And you can use them, and romancing the beats is a thing.
Yes, read it, and then we'll get back to you next week.
Exactly. So, or you can just read phase 1 if you really want to, like, you know, go through the phases with us. Because apparently we're going to
hold your hand.
Yes, we're going to move forward and backwards through this conversation.
Yeah.
And we'll hold your hand through it.
One of the things also I wanted to say that you can do with a beat sheet is that don't think of them as rigid structures. You can move things around.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I had a short story recently, and because I needed it to move fast, what I did was I kind of folded it in on itself, and I took the middle 4 beats and middle 8 beats, really. No, they're 10. So I just kind of took those and paired them each together and said, these are going to happen simultaneously. And
which is, again, something she talks about in the book is like, depending on how long a piece you're writing, you can hit these beats, you know, in an entire chapter, or you can hit multiple beats at one time, or you can rearrange them. And she's like, you know, some of them really build off of each other, but it's your book. These are just, you know, these are just the beats.
These are
sort
just,
of thing.
You know, common denominators, kind of. And yeah, because man, I feel like when I first started reading romance and when I first started writing it, I still didn't really grasp the romance structure. And when I read this book, Romancing the Beat, I realized how little I knew about romance and that how much more of it I needed to read. Because reading romance is the way you're going to understand how to structure it.
Well, and then also like I read this for the first time in January. After writing Banded Together. And like I've read a lot of romance for a long time. And so I did a lot of these things naturally. Just through telling the story. Like I can identify these beats in the story I wrote. But having read Romancing the Beat, I now have such a better understanding of handling the plot in the story. And it's such a different experience in writing, and it's also a different experience in reading. But another thing that she talks about is that you can do your free writing. You can do your pantsing or your discovery writing, whatever like you like to call it. And then you can just take your first draft and plug it into the beats. Right? So even if you have never read this, it's likely, if you are a romance writer and you are a romance reader, it's likely that you've already been hitting these beats. You just didn't recognize it.
You know what they feel like, and you kind of, you know, kind of in the back of your mind.
Have an instinct for them.
Yeah, and this is really just going to put a name to those moments that you already recognize. And, like, you already know quite a few of them, probably, because you know the meet cute, and you know the grand gesture, and you know the third act breakup.
The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
I love the third act breakup. I love it.
I feel like that is so important.
I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, I know. I know people do have a point. And I was so reluctant to see their point when they said they wanted to get rid of it. I was like, no, you're stupid. No, not that exactly. But, like, I would sit there and be like, I feel like maybe you're missing something. Maybe you're not thinking about something. But, you know, the more, like, I've thought about it, I think...
Okay, but I need you to explain to me how they could have a book without it. Because the books that I've read that don't have it, I'm like, you should have had a TW at the beginning. You should have a trigger warning at the beginning, no Dark Night of the Soul, because I'm sitting here waiting for it to show up, and I have 5 pages, and I'm like, there's no payoff for me.
None. Just a content warning.
Yeah, I guess maybe trigger warning isn't necessary, but you should have told me.
God, that's like Lillian Lark. She said something months ago, but she said to, in our group chat, she didn't want to read a book without a sex scene, so she wanted the content warning to say no sex scenes in this book.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
That's like the best I can remember.
Right. But like also I think that is again just part of like knowing your market, right? So okay, so we've talked about this in regards to like illustrated covers, where illustrated covers on romance have like become much more popular, and readers are conflicted about it, because with an illustrated cover, sometimes it's not romance and it's chick lit, or sometimes it's not romance and it's a rom-com, and it might be not steamy and like stuff like that. It doesn't convey the same message as like the shirtless man.
You know, like a kind of code on the front, like of how the books were designed, that like if, you know, the shoulders, like if the dress is falling off the shoulder, you know, there's going to be smut, that kind of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. And so,
and like all that's gone now.
Exactly. There was a message conveyed to the reader that this is going to be what you expect it to be. You know, I just think that now, because of like those illustrations, so like before it would have been like a hand holding on the cover, or maybe 2 people looking longingly at each other but absolutely no touching. Like there was still a message conveyed that like this is not going to be a steamy romance.
Yeah. Or there's a dog on the cover.
Absolutely.
You want 5 dogs on your cover?
I need 5 dogs on my cover. You're welcome. I am your worst client. So what Kate's saying is I wrote a book that has 5 dogs, and now she's including all 5 on her cover.
I have to put all 5 on the cover.
Yep. And they are different breeds, so it's not like she can just kind of do the same variation of different dogs.
Yeah, I have to look up 5 different types of dogs.
Yes.
I don't even know there were this many dogs.
There's so many dogs. And all I want is to include every single one of them in all of my books. But yeah, so I think that, you know, it kind of goes back to like story structure is like, what promises are you making and how do you keep those promises?
Yeah.
And like what Lillian said, like, how do I know this is the book that I'm looking for when I start it? Right. And sometimes you don't know that. So I read this book recently where it very much read like a mix between romance and romantic comedy, right? Mm-hmm. And I was expecting heat, for one thing, and that never came. But also, I was expecting a Dark Knight. Like, I wanted that Dark Knight, and that never came either. And so now, like, I won't touch this author, because I don't necessarily need heat on the page, but I don't want it to be written like a book with heat if it's not going to be on the page, right?
Yeah.
So...
I mean, does it have heat if it's not on the page? Philosophical.
Well, I think... Okay, there's a woman who wrote don't you dare forget me, or something like that. I have to put it in the show notes.
Okay.
The way she writes, she has like a Welsh name, and I'm just going to butcher it if I try.
Okay.
The way she writes is very, like, there's lots of chemistry between the characters. It's plot heavy, but there's, like, no heat, right? But it's a completely satisfying story because of the tone as she's writing, right? Like, it doesn't read like a steamy romance, because it's kind of like, I hate the term women's fiction.
Really?
But it's like, I hate it. I hate it. Why is it that there's fiction and not men's fiction?
Yeah, you know why.
But there's women's fiction, because heaven forbid we expect men to identify with women. Yeah. Right? Like, okay, so you have your 20-minute rant sessions, and this one's mine. So another thing that is in our, like, our conversation, our topics folder is Kate has a couple of Kate rants about, you know, yada, yada, yada for 20 minutes. And I think these sound delightful. I want to tune into these 20-minute rants.
One of them is just Henley supremacy.
Henley supremacy! Oh my gosh. I am so there.
It's really just because my boyfriend refuses to wear anything except polo shirts, and I'm gonna burn his wardrobe.
Oh my god, you should. Okay, that's so funny. Because the way you have it in there is, like, it's not Henley supremacy. It is, like, polo shirts are the worst.
Okay, no, it's Kate just rants about how unsexy polo shirts are for 20 minutes.
Yes.
And then we have
Austin, get some different effing shirts.
Kate just rants about Twilight and the Mormon feminine ideal, why women must softly reject the billionaire, a breakdown of Bella.
I love this.
I love that there's 3 colons in that title.
Okay, listener, don't you want to hear these rants? And by listener, I mean mom. So I want to listen
to your weird friend talk about something I haven't read.
Are you kidding me? Of course she does. And I love your assumption that she hasn't read Twilight. Because she totally has. So.
Oh, okay. I'm glad she'll be on the page then.
She's like a cool mom. So, she is a cool mom. But not like Mean Girls cool mom. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not ready for Mean Girls cool mom.
Oh, you remember Amy Poehler?
Oh, yeah. No, I remember her. I'm not ready to meet her in real life.
No.
I don't want to meet anyone like that.
So, listener, what do you think, Kate?
I think we thoroughly introduced the concept of the beat sheet.
Yes, exactly. So tune in next week where we actually discuss the actual beats. This has been a bait and switch from Writer's Therapy.
Well, we're going to have to title it properly now.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to be all professional about this. Are you ready? Are you ready, listener?
Ooh.
It's going to feel jarring. Thank you for joining us for this unlicensed session of Writer's Therapy.
No. Oh, you were doing so well.
Katie, shut up being an adult.
You wish you could just push a pillow through the screen and smother me now.
Okay. Please subscribe, share, and review this podcast to help us reach new listeners. You can find Kate Pryor on Instagram, Twitter, @byKatePryor. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok @MartyVAuthor or at my website, www.martyv.com. Have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye. Are you so impressed by me?
I am. You should record, you know those end of, like, commercials where they do the quick talk real fast? Like, Lexapro is not, don't take it if your doctor advises you not to. It may cause sudden death.
May cause. Yeah. Right, I have a perfect voice. Perfect voice for that. Alright, I'm gonna stop recording now.
Okay, me too. Bye!
Okay, bye. Bye!